this next unit is going to be a unit on circles, and just like the last unit, it is definitely a little book. It's a longer unit, but you should be able to, keep up with the pace and make sure you're taking notes and recording everything in this little booklet. If you open it up, today we're just going to talk about the basic parts of a circle and also about how to find circumference. So pretty much everything on today's lesson was taught to you in middle school. However, you may not remember it, and that is totally fine. So let's just start by doing a bunch of definitions. So the first definition is a circle. A circle is a set of points equidistant from a given point called the center. Okay? A circle is just a set of points equidistant from a given point called the center. So if you look at this circle over here, point F, that is the center of the circle. Okay? And if you look, I could take a string and I could pull it straight, and I would have a bunch of dots all the way around that was equidistant. My string would be the same length, it doesn't change the length, all the way around the circle. Okay? Alright. A radius is a segment whose endpoints start at the center, or whose endpoints are the center of the circle, or the center, and a point on the circle. Okay. So, if you look over here, we've got lots of radius. Plural for radius is radii. Okay, sounds kind of silly. But if I start at the center and I go to a point on the side of the circle, that is a radius. So FC is a radius, F to D is a radius, also F to B is a radius, right? A to E is not a radius because it doesn't start at the center of the circle. Okay, so there's only 3 radii listed on this circle, even though there's a million of them that you could have. Actually, there's an infinite number that you could have. So that leaves me with EA. Well, EA is called a chord, and it's a segment whose endpoints are both on the circle. Okay? So a chord starts and ends on the circle. So EA is a chord. And you know what else? DB is a chord. Because both of the endpoints start on the circle. Okay? Even though there's a midpoint, there's still both the endpoints are on the circle. Okay? So if this is the radius from here to here, right, then we know that from here to here is also a radius. And so what do we call the whole thing? We call it the diameter. So it's a chord that must go through the center of a circle. Okay? So D to B, that's the diameter. Okay? Alright, let's talk about some notation, then we'll come back and talk about circumference and pi. So over here in the notation section, we name a circle by its center. So this is circle, and you put a dot in the middle, circle F. So we name it by its center. Okay, it's named by the center. It might be a little small. Okay, so what are the radii that we talked about? See plural radii. We've got FC, we've got FB, and we've got FD. Those are all radii. I'm going to make them orange just like we did in our picture. Okay. The diameter, that's D to B. Don't forget when we write segments, we need to put that segment line over top of them. Alright, so diameter we color green. And then we have some chords. The chord we first have is EA. And then we also have DB. Even though DB is a diameter, it's also a chord because it touches the two sides of the circle. And then lastly, circumference. So circumference is that thing we learned in middle school. It's the distance around the circle. The formula, in case you've forgotten, is C equals 2 pi r. Okay? So over here, circumference, C equals 2 pi r. That's what we're going to put for our circumference down here. I think I'm going to use yellow to represent circumference. So circumference, it's my ugly yellow too, it doesn't come out so great. So it's the distance all the way around the circle. That is circumference. Okay? Alright. Let's talk about pie. It's tasty. It's yummy. My favorite is chocolate. I like pecan pie. I like pumpkin pie. I'm not such a fan of apple pie, but it's okay. I'll eat it. Okay, but in math, pi is really just a number, okay? Pi is a relationship of the diameter to the circumference, okay? So in math, we're just going to know that pi is about, and that's why we use little squiggly lines, pi is about 3.14. So when we are talking about circumference, we need to be able to tell it in two different ways. Exact form and then approximate form. So circumference can be told in two different ways. Circumference in two ways. Okay, we've got exact form and we've got approximate form. And those are the words you're going to see if they ask you to find the circumference. They're going to say, do this in exact form, or they'll say, approximate the circumference. So you have to pay attention to those words. So let's just pretend like, for example, we have a radius of 3 inches. Okay, so here's our example. We're going to do a radius of 3 inches. So for exact form, we write the formula, circumference equals 2 pi r, and then we just substitute the r with the 3. Circumference equals 2 pi times 3. And then, if we're going to leave it in exact form, that means we need to keep pi, okay? That means we need to keep pi. So exact form means keep pi. So I'm not going to get rid of the pi here, but I am going to do 2 times 3. So circumference equals 6 times pi. And that is in, and we would say in inches because it said 3 inches to begin with. So 6 pi inches. That is circumference in exact form. But if they say to approximate pi, then you would use pi equals, or pi is about, 3.14. So if they say to approximate it, you're going to use pi equals 3.14. So it starts off the same way, circumference equals 2 pi r. Still substitute r with 3, but now we're going to say circumference equals 2 times 3.14 times 3. We're going to change pi to be 3.14. And when you multiply all of that out, and actually right here we need to put the approximate because we're no longer exact because we got rid of the pi symbol. So when we multiply these three things on our calculator, you end up with 18.84 inches. So when you approximate, you end up with a decimal. When you go for exact, you end up with pi in the formula. So for exact, you're going to keep pi. For approximate, you're going to use 3.14. Okay? Alright. So lastly, let's do a couple of examples over here. Okay. So it says if FD equals 38, let's see. F to D, they're saying that's the radius. I guess I've zoomed in a little too much. So if the radius is 38, then EF, where's EF? So they're saying from here to here. So it's touching the center of the circle and it's touching the edge of the circle. And we said a radius has to touch the center and the point on the circle. So this FE is also a radius. So that means it must be 38 meters. Okay? Something we forgot to note over here in our vocabulary is that the diameter is twice the radius. The diameter equals 2r. Okay? That's something that we can use for later. And for radius, here's another thing we can use. Radius equals 1/2 the diameter. Okay? So radius is half the diameter, and diameter is 2 times r. Just using that for things later. Okay, so it says if B to D is 6 feet. So B to D, that's a chord, but it's a special kind of chord because it goes through the center. It's a diameter. They want to know CF. So here's CF. That is a radius. So if BD is 6, how does the radius relate? Well, we just wrote it. We said that the radius was half the diameter. So what's half of 6? 3. Okay? Alright, so now it says CF is 4. C to F is 4. That's a radius. They want you to find the circumference. How do you find the circumference? Well, C equals 2 pi r. C equals 2 pi times, well, they said the radius was 4. So exact is 8 pi. But if we're going to approximate it, then we're going to do 8 times 3.14. And that is 25.12 feet. Lastly, if the circumference is 24, how do I get my radius? Alright, so circumference equals 2 pi r. So we're going to substitute what we know in the formula. We know the circumference is 24. So we'll say 24 equals 2 pi r. Now, we're going to divide by 2. So we get 12 equals pi times the radius. And now, to figure out what the radius is, we have to get rid of this pi. Remember, pi is just a number. So we can divide by pi, which really means that we're doing 12 divided by 3.14. So 12 divided by 3.14 is 3.82. And since we used 3.14, we're now approximating. So the radius is 3.82 inches. Alright, On your approximate, if you'll highlight these squigglies, if we're not given an exact answer, we need to make sure we write the little squiggly equal sign, the one that says about or approximately. Okay, thanks for watching. Have a good day.